but it's once you use it, you can use it on whatever you want to use it on. It's not like pay per site or anything like that. But it also goes both ways. So you can go back from, like if you change a bunch of stuff on production, because you want to or whatever, you can actually push those things back down to staging, and they can actually talk back and forth. So yeah, so it's pretty neat. It actually does. If you look at the things that it tracks, it tracks pages, any media things, menus. So if you change the menu navigation, it adds users. So if you add like different users on your local site, links, plugins, like it does a ton of stuff. So
brand new with batches, can you go backwards?
So I think so. There's a history, and there's. I think there's a way to go back. I think.
Priscilla's not usually that animated.
It's not.
Where have you been?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this will do. I haven't done it before, but so I deleted the badge. It didn't say extending anything to the server, so I'm not sure it actually did anything besides delete the history. Yeah, so it didn't delete that backwards, but okay, let's see. Rollbacks can be performed on most recently received batches. Okay, so you can roll back on received batches, I guess. So on the main server, you would go into the history, and like you say, okay, I didn't like that, so you can roll back here, and then it would go back. So then I come back here, and then that's gone from the main site. So you can roll back. It's just you have to do it from production, not staging.
Can your staging be your local machine? Can it be
The only way that you can do that is if it can actually be resolved by a domain name, or I guess you could use like a DNS or something like that. Yes, it has to go back and forth. So both servers need to be able to communicate with each other.
Okay.
But yeah, that's so rollbacks. I don't know if you guys missed that. I kind of did it quickly, but rollbacks happen actually from the production server. There's a button under batches received that says rollback, and it will remove everything that just did. Yeah.
Hey, Brent.
Yes.
So could you set this up, for example, the test server, what do you want to call it? Could you put that on like a subdomain of the same?
Yeah, I think that would be your best bet. Just call something like staging.whatever your domain name.com is, and especially if it's on the same account, the same databases, the transfer should be really fast. So that would be my recommendation for if you're using this plugin, in a real production environment, definitely do it with a subdomain.
On that front, I don't know if you saw, I think the guy you found, Mark Monder or whatever, has a new multi-site plugin
called deployment, right?
Where you can do deployment from a subdomain multi-site directly to a parent, basically. So you can use a subdomain for your development on the same server.
Yeah, you can
I don't know if you saw that. I think I posted it, but that combined with this, and you have an incredibly sophisticated development environment.
Yeah, I think this is like a really great tool for content developers versus programmers, right? Yeah. So that everybody is literally using this version control system, both content-wise and code-wise, so you're completely safe from any boneheaded things you might do.
Saving yourself from yourself.
It'll be. Does it handle widgets?
I think so. Let's try it.
You create like a text widget and put some dummy text in it.
Okay, so I'm creating a widget here. Actually, let's do one more thing. Let's change themes too. Probably awesome. Okay, so locally I'm activating 2010. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm just guessing, but and then I'll just put archives widget.
Be careful, Jeff, scanning your brain.
It was easy to find out.
It's not like a Headway.
It oozes from you.
Okay, so the
pixels are about flying with tinfoil.
Okay, so on the staging site, I've changed the theme and I put an archives widget on the side. So let's see if it tracks that. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Let's see no widgets.
Future released? I don't know. Yeah, it's not. They don't have anything about the theme or anything like that.
Did you ever interact with any custom post types yet?
I haven't. No. They work with
Is this pretty new?
It's yeah, within the last like month and a half or so. But it's built by the people by Crowd Favorite. They build my least favorite theme out there, but
Have you used Karen?
yes,
Strong statement.
it's pretty true though. But Alex King used to be a developer on WordPress. Like he was one of the original, founding people we worked on. So the code's gonna be solid.
So they're one of the top VIP developers for WordPress.com.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're really trying to focus on putting your content, making sure there's no spelling errors, things like that, on a production or a staging environment, pushing those live, like this is a pretty good solution, I would say.
That's right.
This looks awesome.
Their little about page says supports data types, posts, pages, custom post types, categories, tags, custom taxonomies, users, links, menus, and attachments. But no mention of sidebar stuff.
Yeah, so probably that kind of stuff now. So yeah. Any questions? Awesome. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Very easily understandable.
Excellent.
As opposed to
That's not usually how it goes.
I'm
That's
thinking
what
I'm going to
suggests
be a full type sheet by the time I'm done here. That was sarcasm right there.
It's a test at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
I think the big words fail are in my future on that test.
Dasher?
No, we're not doing Dasher today.
Okay, I'm leaving.
I want to give you that. This is totally true. No, yeah, I'm pretty much. It's our.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
Well,
It's awesome.
but it's not epic.
It's epically awesome.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to have to look it up. Any
I don't get much yet.
There's an email list.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which we don't. There's no spam. We will not email you.
Ever.
Ever.
Not even the last time it's available.
Yeah. If you check the Facebook page, it's been available. Yeah, it's been available soon since about May. So it's in super alpha. For the gratuitous plug, if you are interested,
Yeah.
Dasher.com, go ahead and get signed up. It's very Dash-tastic.
Share with you later.
It will be later.
Keep you coming for
But
next time.
anyway, so what I want to, all right, responsive design. Heard the buzzword. Show of hands.
Wait, what?
What is that?
Responsive design. Okay, so couple, you've never even got the buzzword. So basically, responsive design is taking into account that web screens are getting way different nowadays. There's everything from mobile phones to tablet devices, netbook computers, laptops, big desktops, TV screens, and sky's the limit. So Anton at the Dev Meetup gave a really, really great, just really deep discussion on responsive design and its practical applications, and that was also coming off of hearing about it at WordCamp San Francisco, which, by the way, if you don't know, WordCamp LA is coming up in about 2 weeks, and it's a great opportunity if you're into WordPress, get to WordCamp LA. It's local, it's cool. But anyways, so the responsive design stuff is basically about making websites that don't really care what size screen it's being viewed at. So let me give you an example of why this is relevant. So TechCrunch is a site that I go to all the time. Now, if you're a web designer If you're building websites 960 pixels or bigger, get with the program or get off my website. So responsive design, which again, check out the Facebook group. Anton's got a ton of links up there from his talk a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Really good stuff. So this weekend, I went and played and tinkered around with my own website. And my website is heydavecole.com. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to build a site that cared less about how big the browser was. If you'll notice, what makes this site a little bit different than TechCrunch's is... What's called this big? No, not even that. Not even
tonight.
Not yeah, it's a good crowd. Yeah, it's all right. So on their site, once you get down to a certain screen resolution, you start to lose edges. You start to lose being able to see. Losing advertising is not that big a deal, but you start to lose navigation. You start to lose access to the things on the page. So building the site using some really basic responsive tricks gave me an effect where now, even down at 1/3 of a screen, I've still got access. I mean, it starts to look weird, but I still have access to all my content. I still have access to all of my navigation. I'm really not losing anything. But one of the other things that I liked and I wanted to play with was in Google Plus. I liked the way they do the photos. I just thought that was cool. If you haven't played around with Google Plus on the photos, I honestly, I'm not really that jazzed about Google Plus, but the way that they're treating social photos seems to be a lot cleaner than Facebook's ever been. It's got some dynamics to it. So, but one thing that I thought was funny was that they do this whole process where it like sort of scales down and then it messes with you, but then again, you lose resolution. So what I went ahead and did was I created a gallery view for my entire website, and I made it responsive. And what's kind of neat about this is that it doesn't take a whole lot to make websites responsive. The most important thing to keep in mind is as you're building, just build in percentages instead of pixels. So even getting started with just, content. And one of the things that I did here was I made my entire site navigable by pictures because I really I want to be more, visual. I think people respond better to visual picture-ish, So, but this page is a good example of why responsive design is kind of cool because my images will scale, but this Google map won't because I haven't done enough smart stuff. So see how it covers up, the navigation at a certain size? That's just bad UI. That's a bad user experience. So by using responsive, you're actually, giving the 4 people plus my mom that visit my website, it gives them a better experience. It gives them a more reliable way to trust that they're going to get the same experience regardless of device, regardless of application. But one of the things, so let me just really quickly show you.
So Dave, why couldn't you make the Google scale? Is it coming off of?
The funny thing is, mine does. Google's doesn't.
Yeah, I know, but you said your Google image wouldn't scale.
The Google Map.
Yeah, the Google Maps, because that's not a picture. The Google Maps is an iframe embed. So, and actually, I think Brandon, you found a fix for doing scaled embeds, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just like
someone smart
max width.
found a thing. It's probably on the Facebook, but again, I was just tinkering around. But what I wanted to show is just really quickly, you can do this to your own website, or you can get the ball rolling. so that if you do migrate to a more responsive design, and by the way, 2011 is responsive, it'll scale, but you're probably using the default images, like when you add an image to a post, it'll come in at a certain size. And as soon as you lock a size for an image, you lose the ability to scale it. So what you want to do is, if you're in a post and you're looking at an image, you can always just click on the little, gallery button, and that'll bring up this pop-up. And so you've got the title, you've got the alt text. But if you go over to advanced settings, blank out the size, blank out the height, and give it a width at a percentage under the styles. Now, this is not a very good solution for the long term, because you want to do this in your CSS files. But if you've got a site like mine where you're sort of moving stuff piece by piece and you're updating posts, I've already got a few months worth of content there. So rather than worrying about where all my image files are, you can just delete the width, delete the height, and make sure that the width in the styles box is set to a percentage. And you can mess with it. You can say, okay, I want this to be 45%. And do an update. I'll update this. So now when we go look at the site, so now I've got a 45% kayak picture that, again, it scales. It'll always be 45%. If you look at it on an iPhone, if you look at it on an iPad, on any Android device, you'll always have a consistent experience for your web visitors. And, I think in terms of design tricks, going responsive is not that painful. It's kind of the catchy buzzword for the design world for right now. Even the guys at Headway were talking about, we're probably going to go responsive in a later iteration. But once you do it, you find that, it's a much more enjoyable experience to be able to move your site up out of the way. And then you start looking at, popular sites that make money and do stuff. And, and you go, well, why doesn't yours do these things that mine can't? So that's responsive design in sort of a nutshell. Literally just tinkering with CSS, for a couple hours over the weekend. And I was able to make virtually an entirely, responsive site. So,
Dave, I'm sure you're aware, but Alyssa Part has a new book on responsive web design.
Yep. Which I think everybody here has looked at the cover and said I should buy that. Wow. So no, a list apart is a great place to go. Again, if you're on Facebook with the OC WordPress user group, Anton had some great stuff. Also, Sarah Cannon has a really good presentation that she gave at WordCamp San Francisco, which was really what sparked my whole interest in, hey, that doesn't look that hard. The biggest, probably goofy point of the whole process is get all 4 of the major browsers, because they treat different percentages, different setups slightly differently. And that's just web design.
Even if you do the reset?
What's that?
Even if you add the reset in your CSS? It's the same?
There's really minor variations between like Chrome, Firefox, even Internet Explorer and Firefox look the same, and Chrome treats padding percentages just slightly differently. But when you're messing with like a 2-pixel difference, it drives you nuts.
What's Internet Explorer?
They said that
it's a thing that is modern.
One of the things about when you're doing responsive design, one of the things they said is when you're you really do have to pay attention to the percentages. I mean, if you're dividing out, at elements that are supposed to be a certain width or whatever, and you get a percentage that's 47.635777762, you don't want to shave off any of those decimal points, because I think that's what you're talking about. It's even though you think no, that can't make much of a difference, it does, especially when you're dealing with these media queries. So
yeah,
just whatever you get, was in there.
Yeah, when I was tinkering and putting together this gallery view, it still is off. I mean, you can see just tiny little pixel, 2-3 pixel variations, but they're uniform. They should all be in line, and on Firefox they are. So you get just, as with anything web design, just tweak with the browsers, tolerate some level of failure, especially when it's a website for your mom, and
So takeaway is use Firefox.
What's that?
Takeaway is use Firefox.
Yeah, except for the new version of Firefox crashes hourly, so that's nice.
Chrome.
Good way to keep time, though.
Yeah, Any other responses? Cool.
Thank you.
Missed the
Did
button.
give permission for you to use that design by
Okay.
Soon.
Yeah, that book by list part would be great. If only you had to, what do you call it? Read.
Turn pages.
All right.
That'd be an interesting audiobook.
Yeah. Did you say audiobook?
Yeah.
Audible, the guy from Audible's trying to read you the book on List Apart.
Awesome. That'd be awesome. All right. So I'm going to do a really quick talk about converting Photoshop into a WordPress theme, because this has come up several times.
Didn't you say you just send it to Headway and they do it for free, right?
That's what I heard.
I think you have to send it to Jeff.
Oh, you send it to
Jeff.
So there's a misconception I hear a lot from my clients, from other developers, just from the community in general, is what does it take to create a WordPress website? I hear that quite a bit, and I usually, when I hear that, I'll sit down and I'll explain there really isn't much you can't do on top of WordPress, because WordPress is that one content management system that is truly separate back end from the front end. Those two things are really separate. Other content management systems, and I won't mention names in here, are very tied into front end. So you are very limited with what you can do when it comes to your theme. We've found very little that we can't do inside of a WordPress theme. And really, we just treat a WordPress theme as another form of web design. For those of you who don't know, I've been doing web design for 16 some odd years now. I've seen every wave of web design. I've done HTML. I've done tables. I was one of the last to actually adopt and convert to CSS. So I had tables-based sites long after they were out of date. So when it comes to WordPress, to me that's really just the engine for what powers the back end of the website. It powers the content. The front end is truly separate. Now, that doesn't mean that there's certain hooks that everything we do is very much WordPress standards. We stay within the WordPress API, so our function calls are very standard WordPress. But we use those to our advantage, when we're creating our theme. And really, when we're creating our themes, we sort of start with flat HTML and CSS, and then we'll layer our WordPress calls on top of that. So we really are treating our design as true web design without WordPress first, and then we layer WordPress in where we need it. That's how we approach almost every project. So when I hear that comment, I will usually sit down with a person or sit down with a client and explain, I know there is sort of a misconception that there's only certain things you can do in WordPress, but there's very little we've found that we can't do. And I'm assuming that most of the developers in the room have found the same, and that's why most of us have adopted WordPress in the first place. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So some of the things you might want to consider when you are building your theme, and this is how I kind of want to go through my process of how I review a Photoshop document when I get them. And I'll get a Photoshop document either from our internal designer. They're going to start backing me, so can we? You guys come in and close the door, and you can stand right in front of the door. So we'll either get Photoshop files from our internal designer, Kieran. She's spoken here before. She did some design analysis a couple of meetings ago.
It
it's
shows,
new.
it gives you your Facebook like, your everything in a row. So I don't know if there's a screenshot, but if you just turn your head around for a second.
Nobody did Google Plus.
So does it give you this bar? Is this
Yeah, that's what it looks like at the. That's what the bar looks
perfect.
like.
That's exactly. I wonder if this.
I wish I had this. I wish I had this 6
Thank
months
you.
ago. We had to create that whole bar by scratch.
It-
Pretty
I
sure
think it's
this
pretty
also
basic.
has a +1
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
Was the one you were mentioning?
Oh, there's a standalone Google Plus.
Yeah, I saw. I just saw a bunch of them.
It's all there.
I think there's quite a few. All right, what else? Yeah.
How do you embed a YouTube video?
Actually, it's very easy in WordPress 3 now. So all you do is put in the URL.
You say fire truck, I can't watch that enough.
Let's look up UC.
You
it's funny.
Say fire truck, yeah. My favorite.
we need a good
YouTube
laugh.
My
That
favorite
sounds
as well.
dangerous.
Oh, it's my son, that's why.
Oh, okay. Then it's not dangerous.
It's dangerous.
There's a Save Fire Truck remix? Is that?
Oh, there's 20 Say Fire Truck. There's so many people that have stolen it. It's only got like 48 million views. So.
Wow.
It does have 48 million views.
Wow.
That's your son?
Yeah. It's the one and only video of our son.
Any ad revenue off that?
No.
Alright, we're gonna plug in the.
Speakers off.
It's just for comedic relief because we haven't had any in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
We can show them my code.
Stop, press the camera.
Fire truck.
Stop, press the camera. Say, oh, truck.
Oh, fuck.
Social services.
So all I'm doing is I'm just copying the URL.
I know, but do you put it
Your
in
son will never get a job.
I'm just copying the URL. Okay.
YouTube just rated you are.
You're not explaining something I can understand. This is awesome.
I'm just gonna make a new post. Everybody log off. Get off my camera. Come on. So you can add in some text, and then all you do is just paste in the URL, either in the visual tab or the HTML tab. Doesn't matter.
Okay, that's it.
The WordPress now has built into it what's called an embed. So there's several services that use it: Vimeo, YouTube. Anybody know? There's a list of them on the WordPress. I'll look in a second. All I'll do is I'm just going to publish this. I'll take it down in a second. On the WordPress site, it's still just going to look like a URL. But when I view the post,
Auto magic.
Sometimes I still get the link though. I do it in the HTML or whatever.
using WordPress 3,
Then you have to do it visual.
do I have to do visual?
We have to do visual.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I was in visual.
Oh,
No, you have to do it in the other.
sorry.
Yeah.
No, just click at it. Just click at it.
Turn on the old
Is it not? Is it off by default?
I thought you were supposed to be the pro.
Where's the
I
hashtag
know,
build?
that was.
My bandwidth is
That
dead.
was a sign problem.
No, but the difference is the embed
doesn't have
code
to do with
versus
code.
this is.
Where do you turn
awesome.
around? Yeah, I truly am. Where do you turn on?
No.
It's easy.
Seriously.
on settings.
Really, really deep
So
and
you
deep
get
with
developer
code.
can do it.
That's
Oh, you gotta do this? Or we're done.
Actually, that's a problem. This is good to know though, so I could actually create a whole video, like post just a page, just a
Yes, is that the problem?
specifically a page for all my videos. I could put that in
What's
the
on
post.
What are we?
Formats. Really,
Let's try it on this one.
And you're talking about actually learning stuff that I don't know.
Not really.
Okay.
But there's some other reasons to do it.
We're gonna try on one other side.
Okay. Right now I have my website and my YouTube channel separate. I don't have things where it's linked up. Because I am not computer literate.
Jeff's absolutely right though. He made a joke, but he's absolutely right. When it comes to creating content, I'm terrible. This is not what I don't live in this part of the interface.
That's okay. Hang out near me. I feel like a genius. Basically comes to website stuff.
For lots of reasons, I'm
Has
sure.
to be
what? I don't. Somebody said
Somebody said
matter
ask
if it's in the visual tab. I don't think it matters.
I thought
It has to be on its own.
Come on.
Watch
There it is.
this.
There it is.
Okay, so what did you do in settings?
I didn't do anything actually. We have another plugin in Zeek that I think is good for example. So that's what Jeff pointed out. So all I did was again I just posted it, pasted in the URL, and it converted for me on that.
And it can be on page or post?
I don't think I've ever tried it on a page.
It
Page
doesn't
works.
matter.
Yeah.
Page or post. Yeah.
But you have to format it correctly if you're going to do a full bunch.
You just have to make sure they're on separate lines.
There is a
They'll appear in lines, or based on the lines, and they'll all be on one page.
there is a media settings tab where you can tell it what size you want the embeds to be by default. And they're actually, if you want to get really geeky, you can wrap it in a tag and set the sizes per video.
Will it show in Internet Explorer?
No.
I already did this.
I'm joking. I'm joking. It will show it. I'm yes.
I tried and it.
This is an HTML thing. It's not.
We don't have a lot of interviews.
This does not work on Windows.
Not internet compatible.
Yeah, I already tried.
It absolutely works on it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the way the embeds work is they actually pull the current embed code from the YouTube site. So this is actually a really good way to keep your embed codes always current. So if something changes in the embed code standard, it will pull from the YouTube site. So the embed code is actually coming from a different source. Is that correct? Thank you.
Close enough.
God, it sounds right.
It sounded great. So built into WordPress, they have all of these sites: YouTube, Vimeo, Dailymotion, Blip, Flickr, Hulu. Those are all built in. So the same way I just posted in the URL, these will all work with that embed process. Good question. What else? Yeah.
At San Francisco WordCamp, Sherry Bigelow did a presentation on 10 features in WordPress that you really ought to know, and one of them was Next Page, which is this. And she said, here's this super simple thing that you can put at the bottom, and she was doing it with ScreenFlow, and like I don't think nobody around me could catch what it was, and I wonder if anybody could catch. Can't find anything simple on the web for pagination. I mean, if you call it pagination, it's probably more complex, but just for Next Page.
It's
basically
not a
plugin.
You put no.
It's not a plugin.
It's built in.
It's built into the new the latest
more?
WordPress.
You put in like basically a comment, like an HTML comment that says next page.
Next page has been around for a while, actually quite a while.
It's just like the read more tag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the way next page works is there's no button for next page, is there?
No,
is
there's
that
not.
No.
There is a plugin actually. There's a plugin that you can install that will put a little next page button for you. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but next page works like this. If you go into the so I've just pasted in a bunch of text. If I go into the HTML, it's a comment. So you can put a comment. Is it 2 words? Next page.
I think so.
Yeah.
Just like that, and that will actually split your post into 2. That's where your page break is. So it'll split it into 2 pages.
Oh, so we don't need a plugin for that or anything.
No,
that's built into WordPress. What's that?
It'll automatically create numbered
Yes.
page navigation.
Do another
That's
page.
that's
Do it again.
that
Do it
is
again.
theme
Do it again.
You're gonna blow everyone's mind right now.
What's
Say fire truck, say fire.
Your theme has to support it.
That is theme specific, yes. I mean, it is built in everything, but some themes haven't built in what you need for the paging part.
What? Do you know what the call is? I wasn't aware that it was theme specific. It's,
No, it's
what's
It's really about the pagination, the way the pagination shows up.
Well, just not gonna work.
It didn't work.
I don't think you have enough dash.
This is 2011.
Maybe you
It's
comment.
probably next page is one word. Next page is one word.
That's so
One word. Next page, one word.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, next page.
Next page is one word.
How many words?
One word.
How many dash?
It's really great to have this vocabulary.
Makes it more productive.
You just need to delete that
Oh,
space.
that's
one
two.
word, I think.
Thanks.
Oh, look, it got rid of my
Because
comment.
it said it looked like
It ate
it was
it.
3 and 2.
You need to do it. No, you need to do it in the regular.
Do you have to do it in visual?
No.
Uh-huh. 2 dashes. 2. He had 3.
It's a comment
before.
tag. It's an HTML comment tag.
Maybe that's why it went away. Maybe.
It may be eating comments, but we'll see here in a second. There it is. Next page.
Marcia said that she thought you had 3 dashes in there.
In the
It
front.
would have gone away.
Not the first time, won't be the last. No, it's not supporting it.
Oh well.
Fail.
We use it. We actually use it a lot on Pajamas Media. We have it built into our theme.
But it does. Genesis supports it. You're saying with the code you showed, it should work.
Apparently, the only
It
theme.
should work in, no, it should work in every theme. I mean, it's core. But.
Well,
But
it is
what do you-
built in. It's the pagination that really is.
Right,
is
the
what the theme
numbering
supports.
does not work in all themes. I can't find it in the codex.
It's in the codex. I found
So
it.
this is
Stanley-
we're actually
page
using
links?
next page right here. So the content authors on Pajamas Media are well trained at using next page, and they use this so that they can get more ad clicks per story.
They're showing
It's
it
more
without
pages.
spaces between where the dashes and the words.
Right.
Oh, it's all one
Yeah.
tag.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wacky, but
So we actually
Try it again.
come on, do it, do it.
we actually doing a couple. We're doing a couple of tricks here to get even more page clicks out of people. We've got continued next page here. We've got pagination over there, and a view as single page. So if the default is
Making
multiple
you keep
pages, people actually find this annoying, which is why they make this the default, so that people go and click on view as single page and they get the extra page you have.
Make it work.
Or ad dollar.
Make it work.
I will
Dance, Geek Boy, dance.
Oh yes, you do.
You want to film these?
That's right.
All right. So you're saying next page, no spaces anywhere.
Right.
Like that.
That's what the codex says.
I think you're missing ad block plus up there.
All right. Let's see if it works.
Drum roll. Nope.
Yeah, it should be 3 paragraphs.
It didn't
3 out of 5.
Go to the
Oh, pages 1, 2. There it is.
So
Who-
show
so
the
who
code
asked the
one more
question?
time. Make sure we got the code right.
I forgot to answer the question. Linda asked the question. Yes.
At the end of a post, let's say I want to put an ad. Is there a way, or call to action, whatever the call to action is. Is there a way to edit it or add it in as a shortcut? So that if I want to add another ad in the next post, I don't have to go back and update the old ones? Does that make any sense?
With me, I don't know if there's a plugin that exists. We'll ask the group in a second. That would take some custom coding. You can you can have a short code that can call to a piece of a PHP script that can do almost anything. So it can do what you're describing. I don't know if that exists. I'm going to pose it to the group. So ask it again. Re-ask it.
So at the end of a blog post, let's say I want to put an ad promoting an upcoming webinar. I want an easy way to edit that ad so that it updates on all old blog posts. If in the future I want to promote another webinar, obviously change the date.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a way to do that.
Do you want it to do on every single post that's
right?
from
Every single post that has that shortcode.
Oh.
So like I wrote a post on Monday that has the ad. I don't want to have to go through and update every old post. I just want to be able to edit that ad. So,
are there any ad engines that add
Yeah.
Open
Brandon.
Talk to Brandon.
well, here's all right.
I think if you use add rotate, it will actually do that.
No, add rotate would do that on my sidebar, but I don't want it to rotate the ads. I want to be able to edit the actual HTML content for the ad to update it across the site on any posts that contain that shortcode. Add rotate is great, but it's going to.
I've used add injection, the plugin, to do that, but I do it for like X number of like words above and below the ad.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of rules that are set for it, just to like.
I want it on the post footer. Just on the post footer only. Yeah.
See Brandon. All right, time for one more.
Seriously?
It's beer o'clock. All right.
It's beer
All right. We'll end and we'll see everybody. We're going to the House of Brews after. We're going to the House of Brews after. We'll see everybody next one. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait. We have to give out a pass to WordCamp LA somehow.
Oh, you gotta give my DVD away.
How do I do that?
How are you gonna do that?
I don't know.
You got ask a
question. Right.
Who has a birthday?
Thanks, Bob. Got a lot of different kinds of projects that we work on, and a lot of times our clients will send us the design, and we don't have a lot of say as to what the options are. We will always attempt it. You know, if we see something that is not right or that's something that might be a little bit harder to code, we'll make suggestions. But they are paying the bills, and sometimes we just have to do our best with what they've given us. So some of the things that I start to look at when I'm reviewing design is one of the first things I'll always look at is navigation. You know, what's there? How have they designed it? Is it flexible? I start to when I am thinking about WordPress, I'm thinking about, are we going to be hooking this into the WordPress dynamic navigation? Are they going to be adjusting menus? How often is navigation going to change? Are there going to be pull-down menus in the navigation? Those are some of the kinds of things I start to look at. So when I get a design like, let's get a better one. When I get a design like this, I'll start to look at, okay, are some of these things too fixed? Are the fonts, web-safe fonts? Is this dynamic enough? Those are the kinds of, and this was designed by Kieran. Those are the kinds of conversations I will have with Kieran. Is, okay, maybe you haven't used a web-safe font here, but if once I convert it, are we going to be able to get close? Is that what you had in mind? Is that going to be acceptable? Is the client going to like it? Are there pull-downs? What's a pull-down going to look like? So she actually delivered me this file first without the design of a pull-down. So we had to kind of go back and revisit that. What are those drop-down menus going to look like? So if we are using that WordPress sub-navigation, what happens? So those are the kinds of design questions we'll ask when we get a file like this. The little three orange dots in between the navigation, are those absolutely necessary? Do we need them? Because it will actually affect how the highlights work. And I'll show you the highlights on the site in a minute. So, what are the highlights? What are the highlights going to do when you roll over the navigation? And are those little three little dots going to get in the way? So we'll ask these design questions when we get a file like this. Again, really where this matters is how often is the navigation going to change? So is the client going to be changing around the navigation often? Are they going to be putting new pull-down menus in? Or is it going to be pretty fixed? If it is fixed, then we have a lot more leeway with design because we kind of design it, and if we're not really changing it, but maybe once a year, then we can always go back and revisit that. They're not necessarily going to be using the WordPress pull-downs. A little bit of a different navigation is here. I'm not going to zoom in on this one, but this particular navigation, you notice the whole thing is centered, so it's centered on the page. So there's the navigation along the middle, but the margins are the same on the page, and the whole page is actually supposed to be centered within the website. So that creates an issue because if we are using that dynamic navigation within WordPress, what happens when they start to add menus within the navigation? Does it stay centered? Does it move off to the right? What happens? And that becomes difficult when you're dealing with CSS because centering is always an issue when you are dealing with CSS. The little rounded corners, the little highlight box. She actually did indicate a highlight here around home, but you can't really see it here. It has a drop shadow on the highlight. So is that going to create a problem? Is there an easier way to sort of get that across without using graphics? So those are the kinds of questions we ask when it comes to that navigation.
Making sense? Okay. So let's look at how some of these came out. I'm the first to admit I cut corners wherever possible. I want this stuff. I want this stuff out off my plate as quick as I can, so I can move on to my next project. So we saw the original site. The original navigation had a white rounded edge. It had a drop shadow in there, and actually there was some gradient to it. I didn't want to cut graphics for all those things. Granted, I could have done a lot of that with CSS, but what I presented to Kieran was more of this, just a really flat white box. I used CSS for this, and rather than cutting all the graphics or doing exactly what she had in mind, I asked her, "Is this acceptable?" And we present this internally before we present it to the client. She said, "Yes, this is good enough. This is close to what I had in mind. I like it. Let's run with it." So I was able to kind of cut some time off and make some trade-offs by just using a pretty simple CSS trick, making that rounded top corner box around my navigation, and that's my highlight state.
Could you flip back to PSD?
Could I flip back to PSD? Sure.
Cool.
You can see there's actually a lot of drop shadowing going on there. I got rid of it all. Okay? I'm the first to admit it. Those are the kinds of things I look at. You know what? I'd ask you to shut that off, but they're not watching anyway. This client isn't a big budget client. That's a very frank conversation we'll have internally. This is not a big budget client for us. Do we really need all of this detail, or is what we did good enough? Those are the kinds of trade-off questions we'll have, and I'm sure I'm not the only one having those kinds of conversations in this room. Okay, so you can see again, there's a lot of drop shadowing detail that we just didn't need. It really wasn't worth the time. Okay. You can also see she's using a very custom font. Okay, we got rid of that because we wanted to use a web-safe font, and we wanted it to use the internal WordPress navigation. We'll show that in a minute. We tied into it, and rather than creating graphic states of all of these things, use a web-safe font, throw in some CSS, get really close to what she had intended. She liked it. The client liked it. We're done. Okay, making sense? Okay. These trade-offs are okay. It's
I'm
okay.
surprised designers haven't rushed the podium yet.
Rush away. Rush away. There's an SEO benefit to what we're doing as well. Granted, we could make these all graphics. You can use a title tag. I understand, there's ways around it, but these are true. All these are just a very simple UL, with a list. There is an SEO benefit to doing navigation as from an HTML standpoint as a very basic unordered list. Okay. Then we start getting drop downs. Okay, so now we've got some drop downs happening here with a highlight state. Okay. All I did here is just ripped off 2010. So I actually knew that these drop downs were coming. I knew that we had to do something along these lines. I knew that they needed to be dynamic. So I actually started with 2010 as a base for this theme. Didn't create a child theme. I actually just stripped out the pieces I need, started with that, and then that I was off and running with my drop downs, and I colorize them the way I wanted. I cheat, and it's okay.
That's not cheating.
It's not cheating though.
That's being efficient.
Thank you. Who said that?
I did.
Thank you, Mark.
The world's biggest cheater.
You're not cheating. What was that?
Brandon said, "You're not cheating. You're not trying." Okay, so it makes sense. So navigation is usually the first issue I look at, and I'm not going to make a blanket statement about designers, but my designer likes to go nuts with navigation. She loves stylized navigation. She loves drop shadows, and she loves to really make that navigation bar highlight. And I'm always pulling it back and toning it down a little bit. But we make these trade-offs, and it ends up with a good balance. Okay. Any questions on navigation? Comments? All right. The next thing I start to look at is what's on the layers. What's on the layers of the website? What belongs in the background? What belongs in the foreground? What should I be loading over and over again? And again, remember I told you I come from a long a long history of web design. I come from days when you had to fit websites into an entire website into 50K, 100K. You know, I come from days when you had to fit stuff on the floppy disk. So we were dealing with you know 4-color GIFs and you know things like that. You know, I really have an understanding as to how to compress things and make things load fast. And actually, it's kind of a lost art form. You know, I'm finding websites, even commercial websites, Dave showed a couple up here, that take forever to load because they really haven't thought a lot of these things through. So one of the things, you know, starting to talk about background. So here's another site. Yeah, this is what she first sent me. It's for a local event company, wedding company. This guy is a DJ company. So, you know, she again, you know, she took his current site, you know, made it pretty, sent this to me, and now we started to have a discussion about, okay, what happens with the bubbles? What happens with this background image? There's an orange bar with with his logo up top. There's a bar behind the navigation. You know, now I start to look at what's going to be in the background of the website, what's going to be layered on top of that. You know, what can I get away with? And what I ended up doing here, I kind of it's like a cooking show. I'll show you. I'll show you what's in the oven first. Okay, so what I ended up with is that's my background image. So I took the elements that really weren't going to change much, composited them onto one single background image. That way, I'm loading that in first, and this loads on every page. So it's already in your cache the first time you hit the site, and that means that all of this art is there for you every page you go to on the website. And this was common elements amongst all of the pages. Okay, I know the background of the nav is never going to change. I know the header is never going to change. Now I know we're taking an SEO hit here because we're not really doing a proper H1 tag with the header. You know, we could have embedded the Pacific Events Entertainment logo on top of it, attached an H1. I didn't care. No. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the. So anyway, we took all the elements there then and then layered them on top of that background. And again, I knew that because we were using a lot of flat colors, I was able to create these boxes, these rounded boxes, all with CSS. So there's really no images that are being layered on top. Most of the images just load as a background layer. So everything here that's in these boxes are just CSS, except for these pretty headlines. Okay. So then I start to look at things like forms and how forms are going to be handled. And again, we've talked about several plugins for forms in the past here. We've talked about Gravity Forms and what's the other one? Contacts.
7.
Yeah. Thank you. So there's several options for forms, but we start to look at, okay, what are the needs of the form? You know, what's happening in the form? What's the response? You know, what happens when you fill out the form? And when we get a PSD like this sent to us, it has this nice pretty layout for the form. But what happens when you click submit? Is that a new page load? Is it just the area of the form that becomes a little thank you response? Is there a pop-up? Those are the kinds of questions we start to ask. And again, I'm all for cutting corners. So I start to look at what plugins can handle a very simple form, maybe in a widget, that can then do a simple response that we got. We thank you. We got your form, and we've sent it off to an email address. I believe we use Gravity Forms for this site. I'd have to go back and look, but again, it was really easy to build. Built it as a widget and then moved through it in the sidebar. Okay. Animation. So when we get a home page like this, she'll build the static version of the page, but we already know ahead of time that this area is meant to be an animated slideshow. So this is going to change, and we actually designed this as a whole separate project from the website. So we'll design the website first, And actually, as we're building the website on this particular project, the client was designing out what messaging they wanted to go in the slides, and they did want this to be dynamic so that they could change this often, because they knew that was going to change based on whatever promotion they were showing at the time. So that's where we start to look at. Again, it's really a WordPress concern. What kind of slideshow mechanism are we going to be using? Is this something we're going to be custom building? What's the slideshow, the one that everybody likes? Slide deck. Okay, it's going to be slide deck. Is there some other plugin that we can use out of the box that's good enough for this? Again, I apologize. I can't remember the exact technology that we used. We did use an off-the-shelf technology, but this is how it ended up. So we just have a rotating slideshow going on, and each of those slides has a link that takes you to a particular page within the website. We've determined a size ahead of time, so we do have a very fixed size. We'll communicate that to the client. So if they later on want to create new slides, they have the ability to do this themselves. So they know the size. They can create a Photoshop document. They have a place in WordPress where they can upload it and add a link, and they've got their slideshow changed. Okay. Initially, when we launched this site, that slideshow was Flash. Didn't really like it. Wasn't working on mobile browsers. They couldn't update it easily, so we ended up converting it to a JavaScript slideshow. Boxes. We talked about the specific event site. So this front area. The text is enclosed in a box. And when I'm talking about boxes, the kind of stuff I'm reviewing when I'm looking at design is the box fixed height, fixed width? Does it enclose text in a certain height? Does the box stretch based on how much text is in there? Those are the kinds of questions I'm asking the client and communicating to the designer. What needs to happen with that box? Okay.
Reflow.
What's that?
Especially when they reflow the text.
Reflow, thank you. And what we ended up with was a fixed box for the homepage because we knew that the text was a certain height. And actually, the box on the homepage does stretch because it's just CSS. And then on the inside pages, we got rid of the boxes altogether so that they can sort of be as long as we want. It opens up the page as well. Okay, so those are the kinds of things we're looking at. We're looking at boxes. A lot of designs, a lot of templates I will see will actually fix you into too small of a space for text. I've converted a lot of design in the past, or old themes in the past, where they've literally fixed themselves into a corner when it comes to text, and they've actually had to control the length of their text when they're changing their content to fit a certain area. Because they literally designed themselves into a box, and we try not to do that, especially if the text is going to change. There's no reason to make a design where, actually there could be specific reasons, but there's not a lot of good reason to make a design for, fixed box size when you're talking about inside pages like this. Making sense? Anybody else working with these kinds of systems? Yeah, nothing new. And then the last thing I look at is images. The images on the site, are they going to be static? Are they going to be dynamic? We looked at 5 states earlier. This is more of a question for the client, but we see this. We basically took their feedback, created this template. Now we start to ask, okay, what happens with these images? Are you ever going to change these images? Are they fixed? Do they need to rotate? How often are these images going to change? On this particular site, the answer was never. They liked the images; they were set in stone. This was a pretty easy one. We just laid the images in. We're off and running. There's no reason to hook it up dynamically. Yes.
Steve, do those 3 images correspond with 3 major pieces of the company, or?
They're actually there's just sort of imagery to signify what the company does. They're not clickable. They're just there. Okay. Yeah. But that is kind of a good. It's a good question because are the images going to be clickable? Do they do anything? Where do they lead you? Are they supposed to be calls to action? And those are the kinds of questions we'll ask as well. Is if it is a call to action, make sure it looks like it's clickable. These images purposely look like they're just set in photos and they're not really buttons. then we start to look at, is there a reason to use a PNG versus a JPEG? Meaning, is there going to be any transparency within the image? So back to the Pacific Events site. Again, I sort of, I already let you know what was happening with the background image here. But if this nav actually had a reason to be set on top of the background, then that's a perfect candidate for a PNG because it has a drop shadow in it. So anytime an image has multiple levels of transparency, actually or any transparency, then we use a PNG file. Otherwise, we typically will use a JPEG and we'll max out the compression until the image starts to look really bad. So those are the kinds of questions we're asking when we're talking about what kind of images we're going to be using. I still do use a lot of GIFs in my design, especially if we're talking about images that have flat colors, just because they compress the most. GIF also allows you to have what's that?
Do they compress more than the PNGs?
It depends.
Ping 8 versus Ping 24.
It depends.
Right.
Yes.
So usually, I don't touch GIFs. I just touch the PNGs that
I'm old school like
with
that.
comments.
I already said I'm old school. It's old habits are hard to break.
No, I know.
But we still will use quite a few GIFs in our production. And then I already showed you on the Pacific Events site. If I have boxes or images that are very simple flat colors, can it be done with CSS? And is there a good enough trade-off with your design rather than using an image? Because if you do it with CSS, it's a much faster load time. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at. Did I miss anything?
Steve, when you make a determination with a GIF or a PNG or a JPEG, all image ready, is that where you're making that decision, or are you using other tools?
I'm actually doing everything in Photoshop. I used to use Image Ready. Is Image Ready still around?
No. You got replaced by Fireworks.
Fireworks,
You go live.
No, I wasn't. What's that?
When you say for the web, it's actually using the image ready engine, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You're right. It is using the Image Ready engine. I'm doing everything in Photoshop. I actually don't use Save for Web. I do everything through Save As. I have an old fear with Save for Web because it used to do a color shift. It may not anymore.
Save as.
We don't think so. We don't think there's a color shift.
It looks like a color shift, but when you actually load it, it don't.
Again, these are old fears.
I use Save for Web.
I told you I'm old
Save
school.
for Web. I mean,
Maybe I'll go back to Save for Web after this meeting.
It does look like a
It's
color
okay.
shift. It does look like a color shift.
We can do a lesson on color spaces and gamuts.
I know how it works. I'm just telling you, it's old fears. These are 12-year-old.
It's time to move on.
Video, embedded video, as opposed to animations. I mean, they have to be dealt with a little differently.
Yeah, and video is ever changing. So, we're in this transition over to HTML5. So we've shown the Media.js plugin. Is that what it's called? Media.js. It's one of them that we've shown. This one is actually using JW Player, which I've used a lot in the past. If you're embedding, any of the standard video, like YouTube, Vimeo, that's all built into WordPress now. So it just depends what you're doing. There's so many different options for that. Anybody using? We talked about imagery. We talked about Photoshop. Anybody using Fireworks?
Yeah, Fireworks is the best.
It's okay to admit it.
No,
I won't make fun of you too much.
I think it's great.
Fireworks. All right.
Fireworks is awesome.
Fireworks is awesome.
No, Fireworks is awesome because you can take a mock-up out of it, a fully functional mock-up, and just throw it up, for your clients and everything. I'm thinking I'm going to use it for that. And I get about 2 hours in doing this with that. I don't know. I think that non-grapple.
The only thing with Fireworks is it actually compresses better than Photoshop.
And it does. Ping 8 and alpha transparency.
Yeah, it does a lot better compression.
Yeah.
And for those that don't want to pay that much for a program, Snagit will actually compress just as well.
Snagit.
Smush it too. Smush it from Yahoo will compress all your.
Smush it?
Smush it.
Smush it?
Yes.
Smush it?
Smush.it, I think, or something like that.
And there's actually a WordPress plugin that'll do it too, with using Smush.
Smush with 2 R's.
Yeah.
So anyway, the good news is my the developers on my team are probably using SaferWeb. I don't do a lot of this stuff myself, so
I know every file I give you is SaferWeb.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Maybe I have something to learn from my team. So anyway, any questions or yes?
Might be a dumb question.
No.
I'm a designer and I don't really know anything about building websites. That's what I do. Why can't you have little orange dots in the navigation bar?
You can absolutely on this particular site.
Hey, you didn't show that.
I'm sorry. I opted for highlights. Again, I could absolutely put those in the middle of the highlights. Part of the problem was we were running out of space on this particular navigation, so we were literally running out of width. Client kept coming back and saying, "Oh, you know, one more thing," which never happened.
No.
And again, I don't remember the exact reason, to be honest with you.
Can you explain how you would do it, though?
Yeah, the way I personally would do it is with CSS. So I'd offset it in the background of the CSS, just move it to the side. You're going to run into problems with the highlight state, but again, you can use a little bit of shifting with CSS and get around that. I don't remember the exact reason why we didn't do it. Probably laziness.
Well, that you're leveraging the menuing, built-in menuing within WordPress. So if you start adding in new menu items, or if you had it set to auto, that could get really scary fast.
The nice thing about the WordPress menuing though is it actually will put in the CSS tags for you for first and last, I believe, in the menu. No, for first.
It will if you use my custom menu blocker.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I think there is some.
You can add your own custom classes to menu items.
Okay.
So
Geek fight.
You can put that in the admin, or you can do it or you can do it
in the
It does add current though.
It adds current.
It does add current.
Okay, so there actually are some things where you can do this. A lot of this with CSS trickery. Yeah, it was probably laziness.
Steve, you make 10 cents an hour, right? So change like
that would be a raise.
Down to 9.
So, Steve, your Photoshop image that you finish that up, and all it is just a Photoshop file, and then you hand that off to your designer, developer, and say, "Here, make this into a website."
The way our production process works is our art director Kieran will finish this up. They'll actually go through a couple iterations with the client. That will get handed off typically to Rebecca, who will then take it from there and start cutting out the elements she needs and making it into a WordPress theme. Okay. And I just sit in my office. I'm watching all that. That's not true.
Where do you start thinking about cross-browser stuff? Like you'd mentioned using border radius on your menus and stuff. You're using CSS stuff with that.
That's a good question. And again, I'll be frank about that one. It really
we should just be Steve.
It really depends on the budget. Larger budget projects, we do full cross-browser testing. We'll run the gamut as far as browsers, and we'll actually start to think about our CSS trade-offs versus images versus some JavaScript techniques for. Some clients don't care if it looks different in one browser. That's okay as long as it's close. It depends. I do think about it. Does that help?
He stays up at night.
I don't personally. The developers on staff, absolutely. They're testing in Firefox, Chrome, the latest IE. What was the site that just dumped IE7? Suzette put it up. Who dumped IE7? Which is
somebody did too, and I can't remember.
IE6 or IE7?
No.
It was Google Apps.
Yeah, Google Apps dropped IE7, which is great.
WordPress will probably give them 3 points.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Come on. IE's been the hellish part of web design forever. And so,
how big a problem is the browser issue today compared to 2 to 3 years ago?
I think
so much better in the last 12 months.
I think there's a new issue on the horizon. I think it's really mobile. I think it's not just browser testing; it's mobile testing.
I think it also depends on your audience, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get like if you get like a government job, they're all on like Windows XP or IE5.
We got a guy who does tables really well right here.
I can sling tables with the best of them. Yeah.
Has anyone running Windows ever used IE Tester?
Yes, that's a great. We actually use that in our production. Yeah,
IE Tester.
Yes, IE Tester will actually go through all of that past iterations
I think
of
it goes
IE,
back to 5.5.
and it'll show you. It just tabs the different versions of IE.
It's pretty disgusting, actually.
I'm exaggerating and I'm making jokes. We actually just hired a full-time beta tester to run through all of our projects for us. So that is specifically her job is to go through everything and pick out the bugs and find them before we send it off to the client, which is new for us.
Clients as beta testers.
Yeah. We've used clients as beta testers for a long, long time. Please turn that off. There was another question in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. WordPress. Want to build a site where members can post pictures, like a recent poster, and then another person, like different members can comment on it. I wonder if any WordPress template can do that.
Well, actually, are there any? Yeah, that's a great segue. Are there any other Photoshop to theme questions before we give them the general Q&A? All right, good.
That was easy.
Thank you. Now we'll move on. So the question was, being able to upload photos and comment on them. So what's
just
the plugin?
members or
Not just
anyone?
the admin, but any member can start with a picture post, and then other members can follow up on it.
So I'm going to pose that to the developers in the room because I know there's a couple plugins that let you allow your users to upload. No, I'm getting downstairs.
So does contact forms does it too?
Contact forms.
You can use Gravity Forms to allow people to actually create a post, just with a form.
But you need the.
But it wouldn't store like user information. Like your best bet for that would probably be to, when people register for your site, make them like a contributor or something like that.
Well, BuddyPress or BB Press would be probably the easiest out of the box. You don't have to do anything because they both inherently have like a social. BB Press is a plugin that puts a form on your site, and then BuddyPress is almost like a local Facebook. What's your goal?
What I was thinking is like food. I want a site where member can post a food, and then other members say, "Oh, that's a good food," or just different follow-up. And then I did a little research. I saw Next Gen, but then it's just pictures posted by the admin.
Right.
And then there's Discuss, which you can do comment, but you can't really link the two together. And then somebody mentioned BuddyPress, and then I did the search. I don't see any site or any template that's set exactly the way I want it. So I was just wondering if there's anything you can make it like different plugins.
I think whatever you do, it's definitely going to take some customization. I don't think there's anything out of the box that's going to do that automatically. Not that I know of. Unless somebody else knows.
Well, unless you made all your members a contributor, right? Just make all your members a contributor.
There is one plugin that will do that called Easy Comment Uploads.
Awesome.
By Tom Wright. And we've used it on a site, and it allows the users to upload pictures, and then people can comment it as part of the discussion thread.
Does it allow it to upload as an initial post?
No, I think it has to be on a post first.
Okay.
Is the only problem.
Kind of dealing with defining members, whatever you got to define the member before you can figure out how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, a simple solution would just be to make everyone who signs up a contributor, so that they can upload a photo and limit posting to only people who are contributors. So posting and commenting only happens that way then.
There's a plugin called TDO Forms. I'm not sure if it's still supported. And it allows anyone viewing the site to submit a post, and it goes in as an anonymous user that you've set up. and then it's held awaiting moderation. So it'll actually, so you can limit the form to, you know, name, email, and your photo upload and the description, and that creates your post for you.
My only worry there, it's about a year out of date.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've used
So
it.
Gravity Forms allows you to do that too, and that's very current.
What was that?
Yeah,
Gravity Forms.
Sorry.
Try Gravity Forms and see if that works for you, and then you can find everybody.
That's the most common solution for that here is the Gravity Forms.
Yeah.
The other option you could do is if you go the BuddyPress route, there is a plugin for BuddyPress. It's called like it turns the because basically BuddyPress you're limited to posting like status messages and things like that. But there's a plugin you can get for BuddyPress that's like media uploader or something like that, and it adds like links, videos, and images to the status, so make it more like Facebook. And if you put those things together, you could do that.
Media component.
It looks like NextGen actually has a plugin that lets you do public uploads as well, if you like NextGen.
That's a
That's
big
what
yes.
I like, but
It's scary,
honestly,
but,
you can't really create comment, or it doesn't allow members to post it. Next gen is like a series of pictures.
Right, but they have a plugin for it. I've never used it or anything like that, but I was just looking around and saw that there was an uploader plugin. Gives you a little shortcut that you could put on the site. The person could just upload and be able to upload it to the gallery.
Oh, okay.
For those of you who haven't experienced it yet, this is really what goes on the OC WordPress Facebook group
Yeah.
all day long. This is a live version of it, and it's really good.
Actually,
So if you haven't signed up for it yet, please do. General Q&A.
I got one
We'll
quick.
yeah.
I just wanted to add Google Plus. Is there a plugin or Jetpack doesn't have it yet, and I can't code?
Yes, there's
so.
a great plugin.
There is? I tried two and they didn't work. I was like, oh.
No, it works. I have it on turtlecodesuites.com if you want to see it in action. And